What's going on, guys? JayzTwoCents here, trying to answer some of the most common questions I find often in my inbox. Maybe I should actually start some sort of an inbox series. I don't know. You guys tend to fuel a lot of the content that you see on this channel, so that's why it's important that I do these topics that might seem like common sense to a lot of people, but for people just starting out and really getting overwhelmed with a lot of the information that's out there on the internet when it comes to selecting your PC parts. I'm just trying to put it right here in more of a layman's terms that you can understand and get yourself up and running without too much confusion. And today we're going to talk about overclocking motherboards, when you need them, and do you even really need them at all? Losing my voice here. Great. Now, before we dive into today's topic, I want to thank today's sponsor, lynda.com/Jay. But I'm about to teach you some things here about motherboards, but if you like to learn and you want to continue learning at the end of this video, look in the description of this video and you will find a link over to lynda.com where you guys can learn anything you want on thousands and thousands of tutorials and topics. You can teach yourself 3D printing, programming. If you're an aspiring content creator, you can learn video editing, you can learn production value, you can learn all about videography, photography, and just step your entire game up to the next level. And you can check it all out for free for 10 days by clicking the link down in the description. It's lynda.com/Jay. That's lynda.com/Jay. Not the letter J, the whole name. I mean, it's only 3 letters, it's not that hard to remember. Now, I've done videos before about motherboards, and I'm not gonna get into depth about all the different components on the motherboard. We're gonna talk today specifically about overclocking, and are overclocking motherboards really all they're cracked up to be? Now, typically you'll find that the overclocking branded motherboards, like we're looking at right here, with this MSI X-Power Titanium Edition, which I wanna say might very well be one of the sexiest motherboards I think I have ever seen. I will be doing a full review of this. I will be doing a build with this, utilizing this sort of a titanium and black theme, but that's for another video, at the risk of being one of those guys who tease videos well in advance. But at least I want you guys to know what's coming up. But as with that said, this is a top tier motherboard. It is designed towards overclocking. Their X-Power and M-Power brand of motherboards have always been tailored towards overclockers. And the question is, what makes this an overclocking motherboard, and do you need it? Well, first of all, you'll find that the overclocking motherboards, like I said, tend to be the top tier motherboards. So they come with a lot more features than just the overclocking parameters and specifications that you'll find on this motherboard. For instance, you'll find better audio built in usually, you'll find better NICs built in. This one happens to have USB 3.1 Gen 2 on here, which is not a Type-C connector, which is really unfortunate that there's no Type-C. But you're gonna find that there is going to be additional features like on-the-fly overclocking button controls. This thing here can actually come off and has a cable that you can control this outside of your PC. You've got these additional overclocking buttons here. Tons and tons of different SATA types of connections, SATA Express, just lots and lots of features. But usually, in order to get something that's branded as being, overclocking spec'd, you get a lot of that extra stuff, which is what really bumps up the price. Now, something else that really bumps up the price is overclocking motherboards tend to have a lot more design in their power delivery system. And that is what's most important when it comes to overclocking. Now, in the instance here of the X-Power Gaming here from MSI, you will find that there are 16 power phases on this thing. Now, what does that mean? What is a power phase? Well, first of all, you've got to take the 12 volt that is being sent from the power supply to the CPU and step that down anywhere usually between 1.1 volts and 1.5 volts, depending on your level of overclock. Now, when you step down voltage like that, especially when you're stepping it down that far from 12 volts down to 1 point whatever, there is quite a bit of heat that can build up in there. Now, the reason why more power phases is important is because as you step that voltage down from 12 volts down to 1 point, let's just say 3, which is where I tend to keep my CPUs, that is quite a bit of difference there. And that power has to be filtered down to that lower usable voltage for the CPU. Otherwise, it would just instantly explode. And then what you're gonna end up with is just that terrible burnt smell that you get when you fry an electronic. Now, the more power phases you have, the more filters that electricity is going to go through before it steps down to that final voltage. So you're really kind of spreading out that load amongst all of those phases. So what that means is the overall power delivery system for the CPU is going to run much cooler and much more efficient. Because as those VRMs get really hot, they start to become more unstable, which can lead to BSODs or blue screens of death, or the smiley face of death, depending on which edition of Windows that you're on, and you're gonna get just overall system instabilities, at least when it comes to the power delivery. There's other factors involved when it comes to blue screens of death, but that's just one of them. The other thing is you're gonna get a much higher quality component on here. You're gonna get better ferrite chokes on here, you're gonna get better MOSFETs on here, and better, quite honestly, costs more when it comes to these circuits and things. So that's why the pricing is up quite a bit on these overclocking motherboards. Now, what you'll also find on overclocking motherboards is additional places to plug in power. So you've got your 8-pin EPS power here for your CPU. It gets its own dedicated 12-volt and ground that goes to just it, but you also get an auxiliary. Because as you start to really bump up that voltage going to the CPU and bumping up that overclock, there's a much more demand on the power delivery system. So you can supplement that power in case the 8-pin ends up not being enough. You've got additional power, auxiliary power going into there to keep that load line very, very steady. That's another thing that can happen too, is as you overclock the CPU and it goes in and out of different demand states, you can get what's called V-droop, which is where the voltage will drop below the user specified voltage, and then you get blue screens and crashes and stuff because it was temporarily too low to maintain the overclock that you set. Higher end overclocking motherboards also have better what's called V-droop specifications and parameters built in to really limit the chance of getting V-droop in your system. Now, something else you'll notice with overclocking motherboards is they tend to advertise that they have a higher content of gold in the socket, which is what they're actually coating the pins with to get a better contact between the pin and the CPU. Now, I've never heard anyone say that that's true or not true, that higher gold content actually makes a difference when it comes to overclocking stability. However, you'll find that a lot of the manufacturers will advertise that they've got more gold content in the CPU. Because remember, there's gold in them there sockets right there. You know, there's gold. You can go mining for gold. That was bad, I know. But overall, you will find that the construction of overclocking grade motherboards are just beefier. I mean, these things are complete beefcake when it comes to the way that they're designed. They're thicker PCBs, there are thicker traces, better materials used all around. Now, most motherboards, even ones that are not, branded as overclocking motherboards, will give you control over parameters like B-clock and multiplier and voltage and V-droop. Only usually you have a much more dumbed down version of those settings, which are very basic, but it does allow you to overclock your processors. But it doesn't mean that they're necessarily ready or the best idea to push your CPUs as far as you can with those, because one thing that happens as you overclock your CPU is you start to get a very exponential curve of heat with added voltage. Now, MSI actually had an issue with the 970 SLI Crate Edition motherboard, which a lot of folks bought it because it was inexpensive. It was under $100, and they started putting in things like 8350 CPUs or 8370s and overclocking them, and then started finding that they were frying their motherboards because they were only 3 phases, and all that heat was being drawn through just 3 phases in VRMs and MOSFETs, and then they were just literally just combusting and popping and breaking left and right. But that's something to keep in mind, is that as you overclock, you draw a lot of heat through that socket. Just for instance, the 8350 is a 125 watt CPU, but when you overclock that thing, it draws over 220 watts. That is nearly double what the actual motherboard was designed to handle. So unless you get something designated as overclocking, mild overclocks at best would be moderately recommended. Even some motherboards are not going to be performing very well with mild overclocks. You'll start to see things getting very, very hot on the motherboard. Another thing too that mentioned before I get out of here is that overclocking branded motherboards also tend to have better cooling solutions built in for the power delivery. All the heat sinks that you see around the CPU are directly touching the VRMs to allow as much cooling as possible. So that's why even when you're water cooling your CPUs, you have to have some sort of airflow going through your case. Otherwise, the motherboard's gonna get quite a bit hot. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching today's video. I'm gonna be getting into some much more higher content quality, production value stuff. I know the talking head videos a lot of you like. I personally want to do more than just sit here and talk to you guys and just do data dump of knowledge on top of you. I don't want to dump my knowledge on you. Well, I do want to dump my knowledge on you, but I want to do it creatively and fun. And we'll be getting to that point soon. Like I said, the shop is just about set up. I've got some builds going. Like I said, I'm gonna be doing a build with this badass looking motherboard. When I requested this motherboard, I asked for an X-Power, but I forgot all about the titanium edition, and this is the one that they sent me. Normally the X-Power is black and yellow, but this thing, yeah, this is gonna lead to some options when it comes to colors, and I think it is going to look freaking awesome. Anyway, guys, time to get out of here. Thanks for watching again. Let me know what topics you want me to cover. This video is directly derived from my inbox. So if you guys want to see me do some sort of an inbox series where I just do this type of video, let me know. They're easy to make. They really give you guys a lot of knowledge and insider information on overclocking and water cooling and things like that. And I'll continue to do it if that's what you want to see. Anyway, I'm rambling now. It's time to go. I'll see you guys in the next video.